Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. And we are back with another exciting episode of Off the Comma. And, every week we have the opportunity to spend time with these really amazing human beings and hear about their experiences with sitting on a comma and getting off the comma. And, I am just so grateful to be able to do this work and to be a part of this podcast and to bring these stories to wider audiences, and also to be, in the front row and one of the first people to be hearing the stories as well. So just a little wink and an acknowledgement too, since episode 100, we've been basically on camera as well. It's been audio before that. So I'm still getting used to the whole staring at myself in the screen thing, but I know everybody else is doing their podcasts with video as well. So this week is no exception. This week we are talking to Laura Starky from the United Kingdom, and very excited because while I have met Laura through some shared connections, some shared colleagues, I haven't really gotten a chance to meet Laura. So I'm excited to meet Laura today and learn about her through her story that she's going to be sharing. So with that, Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself. Why don't you start by telling us, how would you like to be known? And then share with us anything you would like for us to know about you.
Thanks, Paul. Laura is good, yeah. Adjectives wise, compassionate. That's not something I probably would have said some years ago, but yeah, compassionate, intuitive, and courageous, I think.
Okay. I love those words. Those are words that they resonate with me personally. So kind of self-referencing and self-serving for a moment, but I'm really excited to hear how those traits and characteristics present themselves in your story. What else would you like us to know about yourself? This is usually the part where people say, "What do you do for a living?" I'm getting away from doing that. Like, what would be important for you to share with us? What would you like us to know about you?
Well, I'm I'm in East Yorkshire in the UK. I am 54, approaching my 55th year, and
Nice.
I have a desire to be a digital nomad. We were just talking off camera, where I suppose I am in my journey. I am a transition, really. Who knew, at this age, to be reinventing myself and my identity and all of those things. And not really having a solid plan, but I suppose feeling that my life is changing in so many ways, which to people maybe on the outside might not really notice that, but internally, these are huge changes that I've been going through in the last 2 or 3 years. And and I think I'm trying to go with the flow of life a bit more, but having some intentions, I suppose, of where I would, like to be. And, that digital nomad feels, for me, I think one of my biggest values in life is freedom. And to feel like I'm going to build something around, which I'm sure, we'll get into when we talk, in terms of where my life's journey has kind of got me to. And I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, having not had that journey. And it just feels a very, I suppose, exciting opportunity of that I get to really feel that I get to write what that future is going to look like. And I have this really strong feeling of wanting to create a life that I don't have to retire from, because I agree. I don't think, the job titles they're just so far removed of who we are as people, our essential self, of who I'm becoming, and trying to remove some of those identities and those titles, because they're quite restricting, aren't they, in some respects? And but I don't know if I'm making sense, but in terms of, I just feel this very strong move towards, yeah, I don't want to be in a job. You know, five,
Hmm.
6 years ago, I was almost counting down, looking at how many years I've got left. And it just felt like my life was shriveling, it
Mm.
was, it was shrinking.
Mm.
And now it's gone to this kind of just more expansive potential. I don't
Yeah.
quite know what that potential is. And, who
Yeah,
knows?
it's interesting. I so appreciate you sharing this, and I just want to acknowledge you for even though we haven't gotten into your story yet, it seems like there's a newness to this, as yet to be discovered. Kind of, you have thoughts and feelings, but articulating them, maybe you're not quite at that level of readiness or what have you. And I just have to say, like, there are so many people, and I too, experience some of what you're talking about, but I talk to so many people, and it's really interesting because it feels like, on the one hand, so many people in our 50s, we once had this plan for retirement, we hit our 50s, and suddenly, like, let's just scatter all the newspapers on the table like a cat, right?
Mm.
um which can be one of the beautiful things about our 50s, is the reinvention and that sort of thing. And at the same time, like, it begs the question, is like, is this just the thing that we do in our 50s? But only, only you will know, and it's your story that matters to you,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah. Is
let's
it a
kind of,
midlife crisis?
well, and do we have to use the word crisis,
No,
right? I
no,
I
we
kind
don't.
of,
No.
I've heard people say before, it's kind of like a second adolescence, or it's puberty for your 60s, or or whatever. I'm excited to get into your story and to unpack some of what you're previewing for us. Before we get into the five questions, obviously I'll ask the same five questions that I ask of every guest. And you and I haven't talked about or shared any details of your story so far. So before we get into that story, I'll ask you what I ask everyone, which is, as you think ahead to the next 30, 40 minutes or so in sharing your story with us today, what would be your intention for yourself?
Mm. My intention, I think, will be to have like a self trust. Sitting here right now, the mind is doing all kinds of things of
Mm.
filtering and, the doubts.
Hmm.
Is this? Am I going to? Am I going to say anything of value to anyone? So I think
Mm.
what I want to have is that whatever comes through, I suppose, is meant to come through, and I need to trust in that process
Mm.
and not
Okay.
have to feel that I have to filter it. Does that does that make sense?
It does. I think what matters most is that it makes sense to you. And what I will
Mm,
say to you, I don't often do this, but I'll insert, if I will, if I may, something, which is, that's the beauty of this podcast and the way that we share stories here, is you don't have to create value for anybody else. But if you create
mm,
value for yourself in this conversation, it automatically
mm,
creates value for other people. So my
mm,
invitation to you, and my intention for today, is A, to support you in your intention, create a space where you can share your story,
mm,
and B, um, give you the opportunity to talk through your story, experience what you need to experience, and identify, or create or uncover whatever matters to you and whatever is important to you. And in so doing, there will be people out there who will see a little bit of themselves in you. They will feel a little bit more connected, a little less alone. And in some of the best cases, they might be more inspired or empowered to go out and do something they've been wanting to do.
mm.
So, my invitation to you is, focus on you today and trust that whoever needs to get something out of this conversation will get exactly what they need without you having to
Yeah.
control it.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Let's do it.
Let's jump in. Okay, question one, Laura, is, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
For many years, too many years, that comma was alcohol.
Mm.
I mean, going right back to, being a teenager, having probably a very problematic relationship even back then. But in the last, 20 years, knowing that it was a problem, and for 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 a lot of that time, having so many failed attempts at trying to moderate,
Mm,
trying to take a break, trying to quit, and not doing those things, either of those two things, very successfully, which left me in a long period of this cognitive dissonance of, you know, there was a part of me, a big part of me, that knew that alcohol was not serving me. I worked in substance misuse services for 12 years.
mhm.
And during that 12 years, that's, I think, when, my alcohol problem probably started to increase, as it does for a lot of people. We're dealing with a drug that builds tolerance, and, and on top of that, being so socially acceptable and, so widely, used. And so, so the irony was not lost on me, working in that sector whilst, having a secret problem.
Mm,
um, but every morning, I would wake up with the same shame, the same conversation. It was like Groundhog Day. Today it was the first thing that came into my consciousness as I awoke, which was, I've done it again.
mm,
And the starting the same day off with the same, today's going to be different. Today I'm not going to drink. And I'd planned my day through, laid in bed, of how I was going to do that. But unfortunately, by probably mid-afternoon, usually around about the 3 o'clock mark, there was already that inner shift that would happen, where I'd start to think about and plan for, you know, to drink that evening. So to many people looking from the outside, probably didn't even know, you
mm.
know, their struggles. Um, but they were there. And I think, yes, I did progress in life in some respects. And there were times when I did have, I had my son in that period. And I really, really did pull back on the alcohol, particularly in the pregnancy.
Mhm.
Um, but once he was born, it kind of crept back in slowly but surely. And yeah, there's a lot of regret, and I could probably
Yeah.
get upset thinking about some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, just an acknowledgement to you for, being able to share an experience like this, which I know a lot of people can relate to because obviously, alcohol is so entrenched in so many of our cultures and has been throughout history and is so normalized and so forth. But I'm hearing
mm,
you say that, you had your own relationship with alcohol, a relationship that wasn't working for you anymore, that you were literally watching that relationship change and evolve and so forth, all while basically working in a field where you were helping other people with their relationship with alcohol. It's almost like metaphorically like being a marriage counselor and having problems with your own marriage, so to speak. I guess that's maybe not the
mm,
best of examples.
mm.
What was that like for you? We'll kind of, if it's okay with you, go a little deeper into kind of what the experience was for you while you were sitting on this comma. What was
Mm.
it like for you to be wrestling with your own relationship with alcohol while serving other people who were also trying to change their relationships with substances,
Yeah,
alcohol, whatever the case may be?
I was very. aware, and I was very cognizant of it. And I remember very clearly doing quite a piece of work. One of my roles was around training, and I was asked to do some drug and alcohol training for this, what was the safeguarding board, children's board. And one of the things and the themes that I kept seeing was this professional minimization of alcohol. So we have that, and I'm sure maybe you do in America, where there's the general guideline around how many units is deemed to be lower risk drinking and all of that. So, you know, kind of following the government health guidelines, you would come up, because I was delivering this training, alcohol awareness training, to professionals, you know, whether they were teachers, social workers, police officers, you know, and it was such a common phenomena that people, based on their own drinking, which for a lot of people is way over and above the
Mm-hmm.
recommended, you know, guidelines. So they would project that in terms of minimizing other people's drinking, you know, difficulties. So I was really aware of that, and that was something I really brought into my training, you know. And it was, I kind of brought it out into the open a lot, you know, to say, it's fine that you're maybe drinking 2 bottles of wine, you know, on a Friday night and a Saturday night, but you know, you need to know that that's actually over and above, you know, the recommended units, and you can't minimize, you know, someone else's experience based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that became quite a key for me was because I'd gone to my GP at one point and said, I am and that took a huge amount to do because of the shame that's involved and the
Mm-hmm.
secrecy, you know, of wanting to hide the fact. And I spoke to this GP, and they did exactly that. They asked me how much I was drinking, and then said, "Well, that's okay," because
Mm.
I wasn't drinking first thing in the morning. You know, it's like, so that very much influenced, yeah, what I then brought into that multi-agency training space. But I do smile, because I do think sometimes we have a habit of going into to teach and to do the work because we know that that's what we need for ourselves sometimes.
Mm.
I'd gone from, well, ambulance work, it was my initial first career, and then into social work in kind of frontline children's services. And that was born out of, you know, this desire to help other children, because I'd, you know, in my mid 20s, faced my own, you know, childhood experiences, adverse experiences, abuse, and everything, which then kind of led me down that path into social work, and then into substance misuse. So and now I'm you know, I'm teaching things like meditation and yoga because because that's what I need in my life.
Mm. Well,
Interesting.
that's interesting. So what I'm hearing you say then is that there have been periods in your life where whatever you were going through, you pursued work or professions or roles in the solution because in a way, you finding that solution for others was also you finding the solution for yourself.
Yeah, I don't think it
Interesting.
was a very conscious.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was very unconscious at points, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you the second question, Laura, and then you can kind of go back and forth because I know there's probably
Mm.
more, to the story here that you want to share. The second question is, as you look back to this comma that you were sitting on, this relationship with alcohol, what did that create for you?
Well, what it was doing for me was, it was a way to self-soothe. It was a way to numb, and it was a way to avoid, I think, you know, quite
Hmm.
difficult. But what it also gave me, though, and I can very much see this now in my sobriety journey, kind of looking back as you piece it all together like a jigsaw. Is I have had this drive within me from being very young to work hard, to over deliver, um, over promise, and a lot of that, there's a lot of wanting to fix people. Perfectionism drives that. Trying to prove my worth in what I've wanted to kind of put out to the world, and to do that is exhausting.
Mm,
To do that and have and also, on the other hand, the other element of that is it's that relentless inner critic.
mm,
Relentless. So alcohol was the way to just flick the switch at the end of the day, to that fast way to. And I used to describe that first couple of drinks, it was like somebody putting a blanket around, that just that release, that being able
mm.
to breathe and let go. But
It sounds like
unfortunately, I have this.
comfort, like a form
Yes,
of comfort, right?
totally.
Hmm.
Yeah, totally. But unfortunately, I'm one of those people that has quite a compulsive, what I now know is it's an anxious attachment. It's a flight response, from a kind of a nervous system, lens. And it was a word that allowed me to keep going, if you
Hmm.
like. Alcohol allowed me to, I suppose, to not maybe burn out as often as that. I'd still have at times burnt out.
Hmm.
But I think it kept me from that constant, cycle.
You talked about and shared with us kind of one of your reasons for drinking was the drinking brought some level of comfort, some type of release, numbing, flipping the switch. It sounds like at the time, what you saw as the gain was that it helped you kind of overcome something so you could keep moving forward.
Yeah,
And yet,
absolutely.
you're here telling us the story on the other end of it. So, what else would you say? It's still part of the same question. What else would you say that your relationship with alcohol at this time was creating for you?
In the negative sense, I mean, keeping me stuck very
Mm,
much.
hmm.
Um, I wasn't fulfilling my potential. I was just surviving. But at the time, I thought I had it all together.
Mm,
um, I was putting on weight, making unhealthy choices in relation, because the next day you don't make great healthy food choices.
hmm.
I smoked as well, for a lot of those years, um, and they kind of go hand in hand, don't they?
Mm,
But so and there were times when towards the latter part, I ran, without anyone knowing, these private online tests where you could send a blood sample, because I was so worried about, my liver and, those types of things, which in, hindsight was probably not a great thing to do, because when they came back green, it almost gave me another, it's it's fine. You're doing it, it's fine.
It's interesting, I too have my own journey with alcohol. I ended my relationship with alcohol a little over 3 years ago, and it's so interesting talking to others who drink, both in the podcast and in my personal life and so forth. It's so interesting, even those of us who were like the biggest, like, yay, I love this, I'm having a great time and everything like that. There's always more than one place in our minds where it kind of shows up as a I probably have doubts about this. Like you said, like through no activity or action of reducing the amount of drinking, still, in your example, sending out blood tests to have your liver checked, right? Or,
Mm.
for other people, whether it's like, oh, checking in with their doctor or doing reading or whatever, like, you don't usually do those types of things if you didn't already have some kind of a question, right? Or a doubt.
Yeah,
It's fascinating, isn't it?
yeah. But then, there's the minimization, that the mind does.
Hmm.
But yeah, deep down, you know that it's not right. And and then of course, my husband, even though I thought I used to hide it, you know,
Mm.
but the times he would raise concerns, and one of in the last few months, I think, before I did find when I finally got to that tipping point, he did say, "I just want you to know I'm not going to mention it ever again." He said, "Because you don't need to tell someone who's got a drink problem that they've got a drink problem because they
Mm.
know." And it's not,
Hmm.
and it isn't actually helpful because the defenses just go up,
Mm.
and he knew that. And but said, "I won't be mentioning it anymore," and I was like, good. It's just
Mm.
like, I don't need to be told.
Yeah,
you know
interesting. So was that his way of signaling to you that, okay, you already know everything you need to know, it's on you now? Was that his
yeah,
way of signaling that he's done? He's not going to support anymore? Like what did he mean by that?
yeah, I think he was sending the message that nothing he could say was gonna change the situation.
Mm.
To take that, I suppose, that pressure off himself, maybe. you know
Mm.
but drawing a line under it, I think we all know there's a problem. There's a problem. I know there's a
Hmm.
problem. I'm worried about it. I've said enough times, and I'm just not. Yeah, I'm not going to say that anymore. So,
Yeah.
and he never enabled my drinking.
Hmm.
There were some times where he oh, it's awful, but yeah, I'd been sick or whatever, and he would just stand there and go, "You clean your own mess up."
Mm.
He would not. He would leave me to deal with that,
Hmm.
side of things. So,
This might be a good point to introduce the third question. And again, you can kind of continue back upstream if you like. But as you look back at this comma that you were sitting on, the story that you've been sharing with us, what did you learn about yourself, or what are you learning about yourself?
mm, I think what I am learning about myself and have learned about myself is that I'm not. I wasn't broken. You
Mm.
know. Um, it wasn't something that I was. At times I did think, this was all on me, and see myself in a very negative view, but I was able to switch that to be a bit more compassionate in terms of trying to take care of myself in the way that I knew that I could, but then also knowing that alcohol is a drug of physical and psychological dependency.
Mm.
It's when you think about the advertising and the marketing that goes, with alcohol, and the cultural. Well, it's like being countercultural to say, do you know what? I, I'm quitting, and I'm never going to drink again. Getting to that point of making that decision. I'm done with alcohol now. Going
Mm.
forward, is going to be, sober living, sobriety, whatever you want to call it. But knowing that actually is countercultural, and you can feel different because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and I think what I'm learning is that I think I've always liked that. Actually, I've always liked being a bit of a rebel, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Isn't that fascinating, right? If I may jump
mm,
in, oftentimes people drink, one of many, many reasons why people will choose to start drinking. Sometimes it can be, I want to be the rebel, right? Or I want to be the bad person. I want to do something kind of risky and that sort of thing. How interesting that we live in a world where then when you decide to not drink, that too can be the rebel, as you said. And how just kind of sad I think it is, again, I'm self-referencing, that when anyone chooses to quit drinking, that is automatically signing up for a life that is going to be healthier. To whatever degree, who knows? But that choosing a healthier life would be considered counterculture
Yeah.
or rebellious. Isn't that something?
Yeah. Yeah. Because we have just such an illusion when it comes to alcohol, haven't we? You know, it's like I talk about like we're given this map, you know, as we're younger growing up, and you know, are surrounded by family members that drink. You know, it's just saturated, isn't it? Then you know the jobs that I've gone into, the groups. Although there's a part of me that thinks I probably attracted or I was attracted to other people that drunk quite heavily as well,
Hmm.
because you seek out your own kind of people, don't you? But yeah, but we just have this total illusion. But what I think what I'm learning is, and I realised it when I quit cigarettes when I used to roll my own, was that it wasn't. It was the ritual.
Mm.
So there's a lot of rituals kind of um, involved with alcohol. It's the ritual of being with people, the ritual of, you know, opening the bottle at that point in the evening to signal to yourself that okay,
Hmm.
this is your time now. It's, you know, you've done the heavy work, you know, around celebrations, births, deaths, you know,
Hmm.
any day that's got a Y in it. You know, it's like,
Right.
and I think as humans we crave that, don't we? And I think, you know, if I look back at the time in my, I don't know, my teens, in my 20s, that socialization that alcohol brought, I wouldn't want to have changed that. You know, we did, there was some good times, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but a lot of that was, again, that illusion. It wasn't alcohol that created those good times. It was the people and the places. But over time, I suppose, and in time, you, I think what I've come to learn is that there is that inauthenticity, there is that disconnection with alcohol, and that feeling that I used to think that I was connected with people in these places and doing, you know, whether you know, socializing, whatever it was, or whether is, you know, I got older and my son became involved, whether it was the football or the cricket or, you know, all of the sporting events that
Hmm.
involve alcohol as well. But it creates a disconnection, although we think it's about connection, but you don't know that until you're on the other, till you've gone through, I suppose, the doorway into sobriety and
Hmm.
have been able to experience all of those events, you know, whether that be sporting events, celebrations, holidays, you know, sunrises, sunsets, sex, whatever, you know,
Hmm.
good food, good company, dancing. Without that you realize how much this is, I don't know if this is just me, but how much you weren't really there fully connecting, having a full embodied experience of those
Hmm.
things until you're doing those things without alcohol, you know,
Yeah.
and they are, and that is in that full, yeah, I say embodied because it leaves an energetic imprint, you know, whatever it is. I'm just trying to think of an example. I remember, you know, enjoying an evening, because that was one of my areas. It was like, how on earth will I get through the summer, you know, not being able to sit in a pub beer garden, to enjoy that evening sun.
Mm,
and
mm,
and then having that first experience of actually fully being present and fully feeling. But then this is the other part of what, I suppose my journey of and getting off the comma has been a journey of self-healing, and being able to connect with parts of myself that I've never had. Stepping into sobriety was the doorway, I suppose, for that. And I'm probably skipping about a
mm.
bit.
No, it's actually good because it's a good transition into the next question, which I think is going to spring you into more of what you want to say and share here. But I just wanted to kind of reflect something back, um, as you were talking about connection, and it's so interesting, like you said, how a lot of times people will drink in order to facilitate connection, or they feel like when they're out with their drinking friends that they feel more connected. And I mean, that's for each person to define, right? I certainly
Mm,
believed that too. And yet there
mm,
were times that I felt really connected to others through the drinking. And then as the drinking continued, then I felt almost too connected. And then the oversharing or the doing something stupid or whatever. And so it's not just
mm,
connection or no connection, right? It's degrees. It's degrees, how
mm,
much, how little, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, right? So
yeah.
yeah, and then like you said, the connection to yourself or to your experience. So there's a lot there. There's a lot there.
Mm,
And when alcohol is used as a tool or a lubricant or um, some type of a crutch or an aid or what have you, right? So
mm.
let me ask the fourth question. So Laura, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma? I feel like you've shared a little about this,
Yeah.
but what more would you say or what would you emphasize?
I've come to I've come to describe it as a sober awakening. That sounds a bit wanky, but
Mm,
but it has been, yeah, I'm unapologetically, I think I've always been quite a spiritual person. And I think when I look back, I've been a seeker probably all of
mm,
my life. I have, tried Buddhism and Quakerism, and I got baptized after an Alpha course, and yeah, lots of things. And not until becoming, sober, and this kind of healing journey that came with it, because there was a period when I first got sober when I really I just replaced alcohol with other things like
mm,
exercise, losing weight, weight training, shopping, um, you name it. And then there was this realization that what I was doing, it was just this constant compulsion, this grasping to do things, and
It's like
that's,
a it's
I
like a
think,
consuming, right? It's
it's like a
different forms of consumption, right?
consumption. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Almost like a I don't know. Sometimes I think about like a scarcity mindset. It's never enough. You know, got
Hmm.
to. I mean, in Buddhist terms, they call it the hungry ghost. I think Gabor Mate wrote a book about. He titled his book around addiction in the realm of hungry ghosts.
Mm.
And a hungry ghost is this, I suppose, yeah, like a being that's got this big fat belly, but has this really tiny mouth, you know,
Mm.
and it's just never quite enough. It's never quite filling enough. It's never satisfying. You've got to
Hmm.
keep going, and that's, yeah, basically, I suppose, what I realised. So yeah, so went into this kind of, yeah, really intentional, but very hard at times, to do the work, if you like, to do
Hmm.
to do the work of revisiting, my childhood, and I did that, with a lot of support, and but yoga was my entry into that, which allowed me to start to slow down a little bit. And then it started to wake up this spiritual, which as I say, I had some years ago, there was a sense of that, but this was different. This
Mm.
was this was an internal experience, and the process, I suppose, has been, and it keeps evolving. It's like peeling layers off an onion. You suddenly have a bit of a breakthrough, and then you just, oh, there's something else there, and you go a bit deeper, and you go a bit deeper, and my identity's changed such a lot. I think one of the things that I came to realize was how, I suppose, how hardened my heart had had to
Mm.
become throughout life.
Hmm.
And again, as a survival mechanism, when you look back over your childhood, we have to adapt as children to what we're faced with. And there's kind of, I suppose, survival strategies. So starting to kind of connect with some of that and heal some of that enabled this, I don't know, it did feel almost physically as this layer had come off from around my heart.
Mm.
And this real compassion for myself, and then for other people. But I've always done this job where I feel like I've helped other people, but not, but only to a degree, because I've had to have this protection. So I don't think I'm answering the question that
Well,
you asked me.
I had asked you what's changed for you as a
What's
result of
changed? Oh
sitting on the
yeah.
comma, and you've been taking us through and telling us about, you said your sober awakening
Mm,
to learning about yourself and kind of your habits, and then you were just recently talking about kind of this shift from recognizing you had a hardened heart with this layer that kind of protected you even when you were helping others, but you said that layer came off.
yeah. And it's gone back on again at times, and then it's come away again. And yeah, it can be, I say, it can be quite painful to feel the rawness of life.
Mm.
But what comes with that is the ability to really, really feel the joy, to really feel the aliveness of life, to really feel, and I feel that within my body,
Mm.
and it's like that you can't have one without the other, and it is so, it's so beautiful. and
Yeah.
and 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 again, it's like wearing a pair of glasses. When you look out into the world and at people, it's
Hmm.
like not rose colored, not rose tinted glasses, not at all. It's like I suppose it's like removing a filter. It's like
Hmm.
actually seeing things for as they are, a reality, I suppose,
Right.
getting in touch with more of my truth, I suppose, and the reality of life,
Mm.
but without protective the protectiveness, or I suppose, yeah, it's more, I suppose it's more raw and it's more open, but then that's what makes it all the more, and I want to use the word, falling in love with life, falling in love with, you know, me and
Mm.
everything that comes with that. And yeah, and that's how, I suppose, part of this, what I do call a sober, because we love to try and describe. It's hard sometimes to describe things, and we are limited by language, actually,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
you know
If I may, let me jump in with another question. I think this might be helpful for folks who are listening, because there's always a moment in every podcast where, and I've said this over and over again, where we can kind of like nod our heads and go along. It's like, yeah, 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 because we assume we know what you mean and we're tracking, we're
mm,
following, right? But there's an opportunity to dig deeper. So I'm going to ask you this question. I don't think I've ever asked anybody this question before, and this is particularly for folks who have given up drinking, or excuse me, who have ended their relationship with alcohol or other substances or so forth. And the question is this, I have my own answer for it. Because of what you were sharing about how, being able to take off the glasses, being able to experience things fully, what makes it better to feel everything fully, even when it's uncomfortable or unpleasant, than it is to experience it numbed and just keep on drinking? What, why is that better? We could kind of assume, well, you get to experience the full joy, right? Everybody would probably agree that's better, but
Mm,
that's not always what it is.
no.
So why is it better to experience everything fully, pain and all, than to just continue letting it be numbed and easy?
Mm. Alive, aliveness, to be fully alive.
Mm.
To my lips doing this twitching thing, which it often does, and I'm not fully sure what that the body's speaking to me right now, but I don't fully
Mm-hmm.
know what it
Mm-hmm.
says when it does that. um yeah, to feel fully alive, and the more you're able to, I suppose, to do, and this is just my experience, Paul, but to be able to fully experience something on an emotional level. So instead of
Mm-hmm.
just trying to numb it, but you actually digest it, you allow something to move through you as it should, an
Mm-hmm.
emotion. I'm finding that what that does is strengthen the body. That strengthen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if the tradition that I follow, they would talk about that the energy body. That is
Mm-hmm.
strengthening the energy body, which then creates this sense of it's an inner peace. It's a lot more than that, but
Mm-hmm.
just for describing it easily, an inner peace, and that inner state then becomes the default state. That is the default. So you can't stop the shit that's incoming. Life is difficult, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I'm feeling is that I'm more equipped to deal with all of that because
Mm-hmm.
the default state is, as I say, this stronger, more at peace. I don't experience stress like I used to, but then I also don't put myself in positions where I don't watch the TV now really, because I
Mm-hmm.
noticed it affect my nervous system. The things that were upsetting my system, and I thought, oh no, I don't need that going on. Um,
It's interesting the things that we choose not to participate in anymore when we quit drinking.
yeah.
It expands, right? And
Have you quit
things
TV as well?
kind of, yeah. I canceled. I went into my iCloud account last December and just hit
Oh,
cancel on all the streamings from Disney
yeah,
to Netflix and
yeah,
everything in between.
me too.
And I'm this close to pulling the cord on all of my social medias as well.
Oh, I'm not quite there with that,
Yeah,
Paul.
yeah. Wait, I'm not. I haven't. I can't. I say that, but that idea is there and it's
Mm,
stronger, and I keep
mm,
speaking it as if it was true,
yeah,
and I'm just waiting. It's almost like when I quit drinking, right? Like I was kind of telling myself I had to do it, I had to do it, I had to do it, and but never, and I wasn't ready to pull the plug until a certain point,
yeah,
and I think I'm there.
yeah,
Like there's going to be some point, one evening or afternoon, where I'm literally going to be deep in a TikTok, and I'm just going to say fuck it and cancel it and be done,
yeah,
and be done. But anyway, back to
yeah,
you though.
yeah.
What I wanted to say is this is kind of to reflect on what you shared and to build like why choose the full experience, pain and all, versus, the glass of wine and the numbing. And it seems like that it's not just about the joy and the happiness, but even in the pain, there is something that is still better about that pain versus the pain of the other. And speaking for myself, I would much rather have the pain of feeling the full emotions, processing them, and being able to
Mm,
move through them exactly as you said, or let
mm,
them move through me, as you
mm,
said,
mm,
than to numb it for only a certain limited number of hours until I can't numb it anymore, and then have pain that I absolutely cannot control in the form of a
Yeah.
hangover or stupid decisions or consequences and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Laura, let me ask you the fifth question because unfortunately, all podcasts do have a
Has
time
it?
cap. So you can answer the question and then add in any other thoughts that feel like they are as of yet incomplete. And that is, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Well, I think I've alluded to that. I'm still working on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Absolutely, there's no feeling of I've not got this. I've got not got this licked. But I think what it means is I'm really working on. I'm really still working on not outsourcing all of that perfectionism. I'm more aware of when there's things start to show up, when I start to self abandon myself, because that still happens.
Mm-hmm.
These patterns have been there for a lifetime and they don't just disappear overnight. So, so yeah, just being 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 more being able to have more of that self care, prioritizing my spiritual practice, my sadhana every day where possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't do that as a compul. It's not like a replacement for alcohol, not at all. It's very different.
Mm-hmm.
But being a practitioner of the tradition that I'm following, which is non-dual classical tantric route. So yoga is very important to me, and meditation, and but also building this life that I don't need to retire from, which is
Mm.
around. I just feel that it's sometimes I have this battle sometimes. Is this my ego, or is this I don't believe that we all have this purpose that we have to get to. I think i am working in terms of my purpose in uncovering who I truly am,
Mm-hmm.
underneath all the layers. That is my purpose, to fully realize my true essence nature, that I think we all are here for. But in the process of doing that, I just feel that if I can help other people wherever they are on their journey, whether that is to get to that point of making a decision to to quit alcohol, or for those people that are recently sober and are interested in maybe following a different path, if you like, into, I don't particularly like the word recovery,
Mm.
but but I think you do need to replace alcohol with something, even
Mm.
if initially. And I don't know. I'm not the first person to have had a spiritual awakening after getting
Mm-hmm.
sober, so there must be there's something in there,
Yeah.
you know. But offering something that's, I suppose, different from the more traditional 12 steps, but it's still very rooted in yeah. I think what it's rooted in is a yoga, a somatic,
Mm-hmm.
because that's I haven't even mentioned that, because I'm just completed my somatic therapy training, so I'm very much, part of this journey started for me after was around realizing this mind body connection, which I found on the yoga mat, and then that then took me on this wild journey into
Mm-hmm.
training as a somatic therapist, and that's really, oh, my heart's just, yeah, that
Yeah.
connects really, yeah, deeply, that I feel that I've then got this, I say a gift, but I need to use that my experience and those gifts, I think, to help others, because if I can do it, I thought I was a lost cause for all those years. I really did. And if, yeah, I just feel that, yeah, if I can do it and if I can help just one person, you know, realize that what I'm experiencing and have experienced thus far, this life that, you know, yeah,
Hmm.
sometimes
Well,
the words do fail me sometimes because
yeah,
it's such a profound inner
yeah.
experience, um, and I think it is hard to convey that. I think to people sometimes.
Hmm.
I mean, you can talk about yoga and meditation in these kind of, but actually, most
Well,
people don't even realize yoga is a healing
yeah.
modality.
Well, when you said, replace the drinking with something, what occurs to me is that, some of what you're describing in your story and your examples are tools to help you now face the thing that drinking used to help you avoid,
Yeah,
right? And generally, anytime one of us gives up some type of a substance or activity that was used to avoid something, then we come back full circle to now it's time to face it, right? And so that's the difference between,
yeah,
the habits like drugs or alcohol or sex or what have you versus contemplative practices and tools and methodologies that actually help you process them, right?
yeah,
And I'll say this before we move on to the two closing pieces is as you answered the fifth question and you're describing, these new practices that you're taking and becoming trained to be a practitioner in these practices, it's very consistent with what you shared earlier, right? Which is you tend to seek your solutions in
yeah,
the professions that teach them to others. And so here you are doing it again.
yeah, yeah,
Laura, thank you so much. So, there's obviously so much more that you can share and want to say, and you even said, words are failing you. So, I'm sure there's probably much more that you could offer. If people wanted to look you up, reach out to you, find out what you're up to these days, or follow you on social media, where could they find you? I'll put your contact information and links in the show notes, but just walk us
yeah.
through where are you at?
Yeah, I do have an Instagram account. Not very good at it, but yeah, and it is a necessity. Well, I'd rather not be on there.
Okay.
And I have exactly the same, yeah, inner inner struggles that you do, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, I am Laura Starky on Instagram. I do have a platform which is the Somatic Wellness Hub. So that's my where people can see what my offerings are.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you just Google actually Somatic Wellness Hub, you'll find me.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, Facebook as well, just Laura Starky, Somatic Wellness Hub. Yeah.
All right. One of the last things we do, Laura, before we wrap is, since this is all about sharing stories and lifting up people's stories, we couldn't consider your story complete if we didn't give you an opportunity to lift up others. And I call this
Mm.
section acknowledgments. So this is your opportunity to boost, lift up, give credit to, shout out to people in your circle that you consider to be important. So this could be other causes, organizations, family members, loved ones, other creators. Who would you like to acknowledge? And I'll be sure to include their information in the show notes.
Um, well, I think first I'd have to say my husband and my son, Jim and Finn, because oh, I'm getting emotional. I'm just going there. Um,
Mm,
their unwavering support, for sure.
mm,
um,
mm,
whatever mad scheme idea that they've never once, tell me that that's a bad idea, or
mm.
in fact, quite the opposite. And then I would say um, Amy Ray and Jazz from the International School of Holistic Healing, which is where I'm just coming to the end of my somatic therapy training. So they've been quite pivotal, key. Amy, from the point of view of her teaching, and Jazz as being my personal therapist and holding space for me for the past however many months. Yeah,
Nice.
I'm very indebted to them. And then latterly, Harish Wallace, who I am indebted to for. I think I finally found my tribe, which is he has a spiritual community, a kula. He is a scholar and practitioner of classical non-dual tantra, and his teachings. He keeps, he's who I feel I'm walking the next part of this chapter, this part of the path with. For sure. Nice. And it feels a very authentic path, to be on. I'm very grateful to him and to all of the people that I connect with in his spaces. Yeah.
Great. Well, Laura, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, for opening up about your experience with setting on a comma and getting off and continuing to get off the comma. And I'm sure we could say so much more too and talk more about this topic in particular. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us today and joining our community of storytellers.
Thanks for having me, Paul. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Have yourself a wonderful weekend ahead.
And you.
What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection, because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.